Thanks for joining us on News 6 and clickorlando.com. We are talking about the job market just days before the election. We just got our hands on the latest jobs report. CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger is here to discuss the latest numbers. We understand the economy added about 12,000 new jobs. That is lower than expected. Walk us through this latest data.
Well, listen, that 12,000 number was actually impacted by some very significant events. The Boeing strike means that 33,000 machinists and probably another 10,000 other folks who work in associated businesses, that they are out of jobs. And also, don't forget, we had 2 hurricanes, you know that specifically, and that could have also dented job growth. But, even if we take these numbers aside, we know that the labor market has been slowing down. In fact, we got revisions to the 2 previous months by 112,000 jobs less than we had expected or that were reported. And that just means that as we had seen the interest rates rise over the last couple of years, the Fed really wanted the labor market to slow down. It has slowed down. One good point in this report, though, wages up by 4%. That's well ahead of the inflation rate. Remember, inflation's only running at, basically 2.5% to 3%. So if wages are up by 4%, and that's higher than the inflation rate, that really does help people cope in a higher price environment.
It's always hard to figure out exactly what these numbers mean because, as you just mentioned, inflation, that has been something we've been talking about for such a long time now. We want some of these numbers to come down because it could potentially help with inflation. So as we continue to head into fall and we get a clearer picture of the overall economy over the summer, what sort of grade would you give it?
It's interesting because the year started off with some weakness in the first quarter. Then the second quarter, we saw big expansion, a 3% annualized pace in the second quarter. And just this week, we learned the economy actually grew again in the third quarter, a 2.8% annualized pace. But what's fascinating is consumers really did spend a lot of money in the third quarter. So I know that everyone is really concerned about higher prices, that leftover from that high inflation, but we seem to be absorbing it. The consumer spending has propelled growth. And if I look at the entire year, and when I speak to economists, they believe that the U.S. economy will expand by, let's call it 2.5% to 2.7% this year. And that would be a very good result. It almost looks like we're kind of beyond the COVID era when it comes to economic growth, meaning that the big contraction coming back very strong, that we're kind of putting that behind us and going back to where we were in the 10 years leading up to COVID, where we saw economic growth at anywhere from 2.25% to 3% each year. So I think this is pretty good news. It's pretty solid footing to be coming out of that crazy period in this way.
So what I'm hearing is we are potentially becoming a bit more normal, which might be good news for us. We do know that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we do know that consumer confidence, as you mentioned, is growing. So what exactly can we expect when it comes to spending and hiring as we head into the holiday season?
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. I've spoken to a lot of business owners who really said they put a lot of their plans on ice until after the election, even though it seems silly because so many of these businesses are not impacted by the election, right? But I think it's just sort of that generalized anxiety of I don't know what's going to happen. I want to have some security. I just want to know who it is, more important than anything. I think that we should expect that the labor market will continue to grow, though not by a lot. And we should see economic growth continue. There's a very interesting period that we're entering into in that we've grown so much. You might say, well, we should kind of see a recession sometime soon, but I don't see anything in the near term that would indicate that.
Maybe it's that soft landing that we've all been talking about for such a long time, and we'll just continue to be normal.
Yes.
For several months. That would be lovely. Jill Schlesinger, thank you so much for joining us. You can catch Jill on CBS Mornings and the Evening News with Norah O'Donnell.